Sure. Can you hear me and can you see the screen just right?
Yes, and during the presentation, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and then we can discuss them during Q&A. And if you have any personal questions, just message me in the chat as well. This also will be recorded and sent to you in a recap email.
Okay. Thank you all so much for your time. Sorry for the delay and sorry for any technical difficulties from our side. Honestly, this talk is my greatest interest right now to learn more about. Honestly, it's a quest. It's not a talk. It's a discussion. I would like to learn. I'm amazed by all the experiences we have and the diversity of experiences we have in the crowd. So please feel free to join in, and hopefully this will be a short number of slides, and afterwards we can go into more of a discussion afterwards. Again, this talk is about our quest, or my quest, to unlock the keys to exponential growth. Sorry, I'm trying to move the slides. Sorry, I just tried to move the slides and it wouldn't move. Let me try again. Yep, now it's moving. First of all, thank you to the sources of inspiration. Honestly, this is not a new, it was a new topic to me, but it was definitely mentioned. Most of the material that I will mention today have been mentioned before. Ime has introduced me to this concept a while ago with her talk about exponential growth. I highly recommend that you go and see it, and probably it can be shared with the recap as well. It's an amazing talk that is way more detailed and way more informative than what I will share today. Also, Naval Ravikant, a very highly followed influencer on Twitter. He's also an angel investor that has a proven angel investor with over 70 exits. He's an early investor in Uber and whatnot. Has talked in great detail about concepts that include leverages and exponential growth. Highly recommend also that you follow him. He has a podcast and other stuff that are incredibly valuable. They were valuable for me, and I hope you find the same way as well. I also would like to thank all of the friends in Domi, such an amazing network that helps me. Lots of friends, including Ido, Sean Dwyer, Sean Barton, Dominic, a lot of people, Barbara, all of them have been pushing us to learn more and to push ourselves to learn more. With that, let's get started. So building a business is hard. I think we can all attest to that. We can all agree to that. We all have heard, if we did not experience it ourselves, we have heard stories of businesses failing as much as about businesses succeeding. I would like just to reference a little bit of this quote by Ben Horowitz in his book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. He's saying, like we always hear about these, you need to set out big goals, you need to be ambitious, you need to do, I don't know what, but it is hard. And you can go through this quote, but at the end of the day, what he says is the hard thing isn't dreaming big. The hard thing is waking up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat when the dream turns into a nightmare. And building a business, let's not mistake it. I've experienced it myself, is not easy. Yet, that's not the end of it. It is hard. We need to realize it's hard. But if it's successful, it will be worth it. It should be worth it. And now more and more, with all of the technology around us, it's going to become even more worth it. Like, this is an example of companies that have reached $1 billion in revenue, and this is how long it took them. And you can see that some of them have achieved that in like 2 years. These are all companies that have started at some point from an idea or from scratch, and they've achieved great things in something that we can actually estimate, we can almost touch and feel a few years. But the question is, what are the common factors between these that achieved such incredible growth in a very short time? These are the kind of questions that actually intrigue me. More importantly, with time, reach is becoming even faster. So while a technology like the telephone took 75 years to reach 50 million people, something like Pokemon Go took 35 days to reach 50 million people, or to have 50 million users. What is this? What are the factors that play into how fast a business or an idea grows? How can we enable this? What enables the speed, and how can we put these enablers in, or use these enablers to our advantage in our business? This is my quest. This is what I'm trying to find out with this talk. So I came across the concept of exponential thinking, and I came across the concept of leverages. To grow faster, we need to grow our outputs exponentially at no marginal cost. Let's think about any business, the same as any task in life, as a number of inputs and an amount of outputs that you get out. And the whole point about growth is how can you increase how much goes out versus while stabilizing how much you put in. If what you're doing is increasing the inputs and the outputs, you're not doing anything magical. But the trick is, how can companies like Facebook, with only 50,000 employees, reach out 3 billion people, half the world, serve all of them at the same time? And the point is, to achieve that kind of impact, you need something in the equation that causes exponentiality. So levers. The concept of levers has always been there in business. Levers are basically things that will make not the 1 equals 1, but the 1 inside this equation will equal 3, or will equal 5, or 10,000, or 1,000,000, or 1,000,000,000. Levers have always been there. It's not a new concept. Like, the old levers in business were people and money. Meaning, when you're talking about people, you can talk about, we will talk about each one of these in a bit more details, and then we can discuss them a bit further. But in addition to the traditional levers, which are people and money, or with the new levers, which are technology and media, the internet is definitely allowing more people to go to different places, to go to much farther places, to much farther geographies, and to have additional users and additional customers. Maybe there's a point that is worth highlighting, which is there's a difference between permissioned and permissionless levers. This is according to the definition of Naval. What they're trying to say by permissioned, in order to hire people or to get partners and whatnot, you need permission. Someone has to accept to be hired in your company, or someone has to accept to join the group that you're trying to start. Money, the same thing. Someone has to agree to give you that amount. While there are other levers that you can utilize that do not need permission. No one needs to give you permission to go out on social media and speak, or to write a book, or to start a blog, or to start a vlog, a video blog. And no one will actually stop you from learning how to code or from using technology. You can do that on your own. And that's a key difference, because over here, this is where creativity comes in. When you use levers that don't require permission. And the same thing, internet is becoming more and more accessible to everyone, which basically means it doesn't require any permission. Let's deep dive into each one of these. Capital, it's basically the typical business leverage that we talk about. Whenever we say leverage, basically when I say a business is leveraged, this means they're heavily indebted, or basically they've used debt to grow the business. And this makes sense. Like, if with $20,000 I can get a business to do 10% profit, then this might mean $2,000 profit. But if I build a bigger business, if someone gives me money to basically start the same business but at $200,000, and if I maintain the same profitability, then I will get more profits. So it makes sense to leverage. There are different ways of getting money. we should all think about how much money we can get and what is the least expensive way. Is it going to be debt? Is it equity? Is it grants? Is it subsidies? And I'm sure there is more. And even the traditional elements like debt, now there are new ways of doing it. Now there is crowd lending. Now there is crowd financing. Using these tools can be an incredible leverage. But still, this doesn't answer the bigger question, which is it exponential? I don't think so, but feel free to, this is part of the discussion we wanna get into. Okay, that's a lever that you can use for growth, but it's not exponential. Let's go to the second lever. People. Sum is greater than the parts. We've always heard this. Labor, again, is a very traditional way of leveraging a business. It's probably not exponential either, but still it does provide you with growth. Like when you have a team of 10 people, you can do much more than one. If you have a 10 people that is well selected, diverse, they complement each other, then you also have the value of more than 10 people. And this is how businesses have been functioning probably for hundreds of years, with money, with using money to grow and using people to grow as a business. This means increasing their outputs. But again, people, the question we always want to ask about each one of these levers, will it cause exponential growth to my business or not? People in the traditional sense will not be exponential. Hiring people will improve your company. Hiring good people will really improve it. Outsourcing to different companies, to different experts is a good idea as well, if chosen well, and it can improve your business. Having advisors and partners and mentors is of incredible value, and it will improve your outputs and maybe at no cost. However, there are even more creative ways of using people. Like, imagine what is happening with Wikipedia, for example. People are adding value to Wikipedia. People are the ones that are generating value for Wikipedia. Wikipedia is just a platform, but people are basically part of the input and not just the output. And in a way, people are being used creatively to increase both sides of the equation. Not only this, like places like Facebook and GoFundMe are basically worthless if they have no people. Like, I don't care about Facebook as a tool. I care about Facebook because I see my friends and and updates about them over there, and it connects me with them. The value is actually generated by the people. If you think about it, maybe we should get paid basically for being on Facebook. Instead, something else is happening, which is basically that we are creating value to Facebook in many different ways. Let's not even get into how our data can be used for advertising. But also now, another creative way of using people to improve the output is we're improving the product. Think about Netflix. Netflix last year, they got more nominations to Academy Awards than any other company. And do you know why? Because they're using their data. They know exactly what we like, and they can produce more of it. The biggest difference between Netflix and traditional studios that have been there for hundreds of years is that, very sorry, my kids are running around. The biggest difference between Netflix and the other 100 is that they're using this data, while other traditional studios like Warner and whatnot are not using this data. It's a one-way. They keep producing movies, and sometimes it's a hit and sometimes it's not. Netflix, it's a completely different scenario, and they are using us all the time to improve their product. So people, in the traditional sense, is not exponential, but in the more creative sense is exponential. So the question continues. How can we utilize some of these exponential factors into our businesses? Now let's get into the really interesting parts, like the really most exponential out of all, media. Media by its nature is exponential. Traditional media like TV, like radio, if you have If you have a business and you have only 10 clients, and all of a sudden you go on an interview on national TV, and all of a sudden 5 million people hear about you. Now your brand seems bigger. Your company seems more valuable. How can you utilize? Not all of these are paid. Some of these you can achieve them, but if you go after them, it will require some effort, it will require some focus, it will require some search, but the point is they can make your output grow exponentially. New media is even better, like in the sense of using social networks, blogs, newsletters, podcasts, and YouTube. If you focus on these, some people don't even have products, but because they're good on YouTube, they're good in the content that they create, they're starting to make money. And that, while it can be done on its own, you can create content and on its own as a sole product and actually use it and distribute it. More importantly, you can utilize that in your business. We'll talk about concrete examples, but think about how why luxury brands sell the same leather bags but for a much higher price. What did they do differently? Why will people assume that it's all right for them to ask for these prices? Most probably it is related to their communication, and communication can be a lot of things. It can be things related to their advertising. It can be the word of mouth about them. It can be communicated in their pricing. But the point is their communication is flawless. Their communication is well thought of. And the more you can think, you can improve how your brand speaks, how your brand communicates, the more output you can achieve as a business. The last and probably the more interesting out of all levers, because it's probably the recent and it's still evolving, is technology. But technology is a big word. What's under technology, some aspects of technology are exponential and some are not. And we have to be careful of because at the end of the day, technology can be something that is incredibly expensive if not used well, or it can be something incredibly useful if used well. Technology has contributed to a lot of what has happened in the past decades, like factories, industrial revolution, computers. I don't need to tell you how these things have changed our lives. But even more recently, what is happening with code and software is impacting our lives even better. And these are the kind of things that have enabled, if I go back to the first slide, the ones where businesses have achieved $1 billion in a few years, you will find that most of them have used code. Most of them were related to software. It doesn't mean that they're from a specific industry. They're not all startups that are directly related to the internet, but they've used the internet to their advantage as much as possible in different ways. Software does not need to be complicated. You don't absolutely have to learn how to code, but it's about learning how to use these platforms around you. You can build a website to sell your products, but you can also sell your product on Amazon. That's a great example of how using something can actually improve your outputs, improve your business immensely. Enablers. How do we identify and use enablers as much as possible? And of course, the combination of media and technology, the internet, the ever-evolving enabler. The internet has opened up a lot of opportunities, and it will continue to provide even more opportunities as we go on. And it's changing. It's never the same answer. What is the answer today probably won't be the answer tomorrow, and it wasn't the answer yesterday. But at least today, we can all tell that using e-commerce platforms is useful, using social media is useful, being available on search engines is useful, and emails, which seems so, it can seem like it's for free and it's just a tool, but the reality is some businesses are generating millions of dollars just by using emails, just by sending news that has a bit of sponsorship on emails. Some of these are just tools that are almost for free and that are not useful at all. But some businesses have managed to turn these into things that create money. And these are the kind of enablement. Once you do that, once you unlock these, once we can unlock these, then we can achieve exponential growth and exponential outputs. Let's take a look at an example. Again, I'm trying all of this. Some of these are mainly subjective, but feel free to correct me or to discuss this later on. But let's think about this. I've put all of the levers to the left, and I'm trying to think if a business is clearly disrupting another business, is it because of the levers or not? Let's think about the example of Netflix versus AMC. AMC is going through a lot of trouble now. I'm not sure if they already declared bankruptcy or they're close to do that, but they are in a lot of trouble. Netflix, at the same time, is in the best time of its lives. This is not necessarily just because of COVID. This is because most of these levers are done correctly. Again, people are used to improve the product and not just as customers only. Money was leveraged well because they requested financing and they got some investments. Media, Netflix is very smart in using media. It's very smart in using social media. It's always there. It's always trendy. And although it doesn't need any, although it might not need any advertising, it's doing that very well. Very sorry for that. That's my 3-year-old crying. Finally, software. They've used their software well. It's basically mostly a software business, and their hardware is used well. And of course, they're utilizing the internet. They're delivering movies to us, even if our internet isn't that great. Let's talk about AMC as another example. They're not using people, in the sense that people are not improving the product. It's one-way communication. We go and watch the movies that they offer. We almost have we give no feedback other than our attendance. They have invested. They are good in using media, but they don't have the software, the hardware, and they're barely using the internet, if any. The end result out of all of this, I'm getting adaptive recommendations that are tailored to me from Netflix. I'm getting lower pricing. I'm getting higher variety. Maybe the only disadvantage is that it consumes too much of my time because I'm watching it all the time. But it's only because they're good at it. AMC, the price is still high. Maybe it's a better environment, like I enjoy being there more, but there's no customization according to my taste, at least nothing that I know of. Levers. How many of these levers were used correctly? How many of these levers were not used? Not because they don't have the money, but maybe because they've had so much momentum in the old business model that actually they did not know. Like, wasn't it possible that AMC starts its own Netflix? Didn't they have the money? Didn't they have more money than Netflix when they started? Didn't they know more about this industry? I don't know. These are questions that intrigue me, at least. Let's take a look at a completely different industry. Prescription glasses. I don't know how many of you have heard about Zenni, but Zenni is basically an online website that you can go put your prescription on and you can order glasses. Zenni, probably it's not that popular because I don't think they've used all of the levers. I don't think they've used media correctly. I don't think they've raised enough financing, and maybe they're not using people correctly. Nevertheless, they're using incredible software. If you go to their website, you will see what I'm talking about. They have worked well with hardware because they've centralized their processing so that all the glasses are made in one place. And this is how they've disrupted the business. And they're using the internet. All of their sales are online. What is the result of all of difference. If you go to buy prescription glasses from Zenni, you can get glasses as low as $7, and the average price for eyeglasses, prescription eyeglasses, is $40. This is, to me, this is 5 times cheaper than if I go, including my insurance, to a brick and mortar shop to buy glasses. I always do this to my son. But the difference is incredible between the two. More importantly, they're selling 25,000 glasses per day, or the equivalent of 300 stores, just because they moved all of their business online and they used the right levers. Let's think about brick and mortar shops. Any eyeglass shop that is around you in the neighborhood, how many of the levers are they using? How long can they continue to do this way? The end result is that they have higher pricing. True, they have a personal experience. I can go and try out the glasses, but Zenni is trying to do something different. And honestly, for the price differential, I would go here any time of any day. And there are much less glasses sold per day. Again, let's talk about a completely different industry, fitness. Gold's Gym, either bankrupt or almost declaring bankruptcy. How many of the levers are being used here versus how many are being used here? And the results versus the results. These are not small brands. These are big, huge companies. But for one reason or another, the lack of the existence of the levers is not letting them do well. And amazingly enough, disruption, the right usage of levers, frequently comes from new players with limited resources, because they are really trying to maximize everything around them. Final notes, what's next? Okay, we understand the concept of levers. What do we do next? Look for them. Look for the hacks. How can we transform this concept into actual tactics? People, to leverage people, hire the best. But not only hire the best, incentivize referrals. Referrals is one of the ways for exponential growth. If you think about why did you join Facebook in the first place? Most probably it's because someone recommended it to you. Most of the successful businesses use referrals or are referred, but you don't have to leave it to chance. You can incentivize it. You can say, if you refer 3 people, you will get so and so. And it doesn't have to be something that is expensive. It can be something for free. But unless you go through the exercise of how do I incentivize people to refer my business, you won't actually have as many referrals, or not the maximum potential at least. How do you activate word of mouth? This is exponential. These are just some examples of how you can activate this lever. Capital, looking for grants, crowdfunding, but it's not just about looking at these options, but it's about also investing the time to make sure that you execute this well. It's not just about launching something on a crowdfunding site, but it's about which ones get more success rates than others and why, and how can you replicate that. Media, definitely, I don't know, we can all leverage media more. We can all speak more about our brands or improve how our brand speaks and looks in front of others. How do we maximize this? Technology, even if we're not an expert in technology, I am not an expert. I do not have a computer science degree, and I don't understand how to code. Nevertheless, if we look hard, we will find tools, and tools are coming up by the day. In the old days, if you wanted to build an e-commerce website, you had to go from scratch or hire a programmer. Today, you can go to Shopify and set up your store in a day or 2. And as much as possible, don't build anything from scratch anyway. Look for the other options. Most probably they do exist, but they need some research. They need you to invest the time for. At the end of the day, you need to invest some time to actually find out which of these levers work for your business and how can you maximize them. And I'm sure that there are ways that people haven't thought about yet that will still come up in the future, because we are in an ever-changing world, and the solutions are always evolving and changing. At the end of the day, like I said at the beginning of this presentation, this is not a new concept. Exponentiality and levers have been there all along. They can be counterintuitive, yet they have been a driving force in creating impact. And I invite all of us to invest the time to find out more how to apply them in our businesses. These two quotes are just incredible, just to show you the magnitude of exponential business. But at the end of the day, the biggest and the most important quote of them all is, if you give me a lever long enough and a place to stand, I will be able to move the earth. That's it for me. Honestly, what do you think? It's a quest for knowledge more than a talk. I will stop here, and I will leave it for the Domi team to lead the discussion.
Yeah, if you could stop sharing your screen, then we could start Q&A.
Sure. Okay.
That was great. Thank you so much. I took a number of notes, and it is really thought-provoking. I did want to ask a few questions, and there were a couple of comments in the chat. I was wondering if you thought branding was also a lever, not just a brand from a media's perspective, but also internal branding, meaning user experience, whether it's in the store or through an interface that becomes a lever. Just wonder about your thoughts there.
Of course, absolutely. If I think about it, maybe I would like to put it under the umbrella of media, because at the end of the day, brand is how a business almost presents itself, how it speaks, what kind of voice it is, what kind of customers are they going for. But at the end of the day, if we think, for some businesses, potentially it is an important lever to make it a standalone concept to think about and to really take care of. And I think especially for luxury brands, especially for professional services, because trust is highly built on brand. Definitely. And is it a lever? Yes, definitely it is. This is how luxury brands are worth much more. This is why brands that are well known are usually valued. I've read a study somewhere that if you compare two businesses, and one of them no one has heard about it before, and another one that is well known and the brand is much more well known, then the well known brand most probably will get a higher valuation. So I completely agree. There's definitely a lever.
Great. You are a serial entrepreneur, and you've coached a number of businesses internationally. Are there some commonalities in terms of the questions or the probing that you do to help unlock this type of thinking in entrepreneurs?
Yes, and again, it's been a journey. So me personally, I've started with businesses that were not scalable, that did not use any levers. And honestly, if you're smart enough, if you're good enough, if you work hard enough, you can make any business work. But the question is, will it be worth it? Will it be worth your time? Is it according to is it worth your opportunity cost? Is it worth your value in the market? If you go and try hard to find a job versus you go and try hard to start a business, will you achieve more? And the more levers you use, the more your business will be worth it. So the question that I try to always ask is that this concept, after 5 years, is it worth your time? If you work hard day and night to make this successful, will it be worth it? Or will it be just barely successful and you're barely making money? Then what's the point? So these are the kind of questions. And honestly, there is no such a thing as right and wrong when it comes to this, because not everyone necessarily wants to be that extra rich billionaire. Some people are just happy with lifestyle businesses, and spending enough time with the family, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm one of these people, but at the end of the day, it's more about having an informed decision about this. When you start a business, it's hard work. It can be that much output with that much work, or it can be less output with less work. Just be informed about the concept of levers, and be informed about whether you want to use them or not, and be informed whether it's worth your time or not. As much as possible, of course.
That's great. That's a great answer, and also very thought-provoking. And I'll ask a somewhat self-serving or team-serving question, if you'll indulge me. You also own a co-working space, and so you're a subject matter expert there. I was wondering what trends you see for co-working and incubation as you look into your crystal ball and run that business. And so you can see why that's a bit self-serving from my perspective. So thanks in advance for your answer.
No, absolutely. Honestly, like while probably many people may be thinking that co-working space, this might not be a good time for them, or because a lot of people are working from home, I honestly don't think that's the case, because I've been through a down economy before, and I've heard the same points about co-working spaces, that there are no more startups now, the economy is uncertain and whatnot. And what I found was actually very simple. What actually I found was that our clients were only startups, and bigger companies would not even look at us. When the economy was good, they would rent out their own space and do their own thing. But the reality is, once the economy has hit, some of these big companies actually were interested. Now, some of them actually want to have a co-working space. They want to be more efficient. And I think the reality is, companies want to become more efficient, but it won't happen. They won't have 100% of the experience with 100% work from home. So what will happen is, potentially, more larger companies will think about this concept of being more lean and renting in co-working spaces and having these kind of things. So I'm not worried about co-working space. I think all of this is just a phase, and when we all come back, we're all going to go back to it. But what is happening in terms of trends, like a lot of co-working spaces are trying different things. I've seen co-working spaces, or I've heard of co-working spaces putting these partitions between them. I've heard of co-working spaces, like, of course, this is most people, like, making the cleanliness and whatnot an absolute priority for the offices. And I've even heard of co-working spaces even leasing out furniture and trying to work out to almost diversify their business model. And of course, virtual events like this, the major driver for it is basically co-working spaces. And the reality is potentially will always be a merge between the two, the virtual experience versus the physical experience. It will not be either or. But if anything, I think the value of co-working spaces in the future will increase. And as businesses become more flexible, they will see their value more.
Great, thank you. And thanks to the rest of the group for allowing me a little one-on-one mentorship on your time. So I won't take any of your time, and thanks, Ali. I'll follow up and pick your brain a little more with an organized session. Harley has been monitoring questions from the group, and so I will turn it over to Harley. And Harley, if you, we've asked you to keep time. We got started a little bit late, so maybe if we can extend by another 5 minutes or so that we get as many questions in as possible. So thanks.
So one question from the chat is, does anyone know good ways to start visioning a target audience? What questions to ask as a business? There's been a little side conversation about it in the chat, so if you want to read up on that, I think that could be a good discussion for the group.
Sure. So, sorry, the main question was my target audience, picking the target audience. I haven't looked at the chat, sorry, because I was, but if you want, okay.
Yeah, if
Sorry,
you wanna
this is
just ask the
Antonio.
question again, Harley, that might be.
Or maybe if the person that asked the question, Joara,
It was Sean, actually.
was it Sean? Do you want to ask the question directly?
Hey, good afternoon. Sorry, I was having technical difficulties getting off mute. But yeah, my question was just, does anyone know like good ways to start visioning your target audience and what questions you ask yourself as a business to start defining that, so that it's not just a broad range, and you can really, you know, target styles and people to leverage your business? And I know that's a very vague and general question. Starts the model,
Sure.
but
We can. I think it's always healthy to start with to start big. But sorry, what kind of industry is this within? Is this professional services in general, or is it goods? Is it a product? Is it a service?
I didn't have a specific industry in mind. Couple ideas, but not particular. Yeah.
If we are within this topic, like I think the answer will be the very unfortunate answer of it depends, or it depends on the type of industry and whatnot. You can have completely different target audiences. You can have something very small or something very large. But if we stay within the concept of exponential growth and using levers, I think probably what is more timely is to target as many as possible, while at the same time offering customization. Like this is the time for reaching out to try to achieve 2 million clients with your business. This is the time to do it. It wasn't 50 years ago, it wasn't 100 years ago. So the bigger target audience for you, probably it will be healthier for your business. But again, it really depends on the type of business it is. If it's a luxury brand, you can't go for a mass target. But so it really depends. And by all means, if you want to reach out to me on something for a more organized session, feel free to do that. Or you can probably also, there are definitely other mentors that are much more experienced in marketing than I am.
I'll add a couple of comments if I may. There's a concept called personas, and it's the idea of really getting into the head of your target markets and thinking about, you know, what it is they eat and drink and sleep and drive and media they consume, and what is most relevant for those target markets. And I agree with Ali. And then in aggregate, you stack these personas and create nuanced communication so that media, as discussed, becomes a critical success factor and a lever. And again, I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that if I can be helpful as well. But personas, and you can, that's easily researchable, is a big part of creating brand equity, which can drive user experience. So that's a quick comment. Other questions?
And if anyone doesn't want to say their question out loud, they can message it to me privately as well, and I'll read it.
Well, why don't you toss one from the list, Harley?
Okay, let me see if anyone put. No questions in the chat, but there is a statement that brand positioning is very crucial to the success of a company. And positioning means that you understand your market and target audience better than they know themselves, and you anticipate needs and trigger emotional responses. That Netflix does that. That could be a good way to, when you vision your audience, to even get to know them better and to target them more as well. Does anyone have any other questions or statements that they wanted to make about this presentation?
I actually have a question, like for whoever wants to answer it. Well, what do you guys think about the concept of levers? Do you agree with that we should spend a lot of time, because it will take time from levers by their own definition are basically enablers. So if I'm selling soap, I can focus on making the soap the best soap ever, or I can focus on talking about it on social media and selling it online and I don't know what. So at the end of the day, these are enablers and they might look like distractions. So the question is, are they distractions or not? Should I just focus? Like, what do you think? Do you believe levers are important? How do we achieve this balance between the two? These are all questions in my mind that I honestly don't know. Do you guys have any ideas related to this? Sorry,
I
Chris.
feel like, yeah, I wanted to say something like, I feel like with advertising, a lot of people feel like if they spend more time on advertising, figuring out who their target market is, they don't focus on their product, they can get a large reach and get a lot of people to buy it. But if your product isn't good enough, you don't actually care about what you're doing and trying to produce, then people aren't going to come back, and that's where your real amount of money comes in. Where your returning customers are the people who are really going to be your base of who's going to be your consumers. So I feel like that's the most important thing. And a balance is just trying to make sure you create a great product first before you start advertising a lot and making sure you get your reach out there. That's my idea.
Let me play the devil's advocate, Jorge. I will say I agree with you, but I will say that this is not what is common. What is more common, at least from the businesses that I've seen fail, is that actually they focus way too much on the product and on perfecting the product to the extent that they exhaust their resources, and they don't, when the time comes to marketing, they already have exhausted everything they have and all the energy they have, and they stop the business. It's just an observation more than anything. I'm not saying that.
I'm sorry, you broke up.
Sorry?
You broke up. I couldn't hear the last part.
What he said was that people focus too much on perfecting the product rather than marketing it.
And what I'm saying, it's a matter of 2080. Like, what is more common? And maybe it's some, from my observations, from my limited observations, what is more common is that people focus on their products rather than the enablers. That's why potentially sometimes you will see people that have great products that no one knows about. You will see that so frequently. At least I've seen it. I've seen it in Domi, I've seen it in other places. And so the point is, and maybe that is because I'm always comfortable with what I know about more. And sometimes if I started a business in a specific product, I like to spend more time with the product. If you tell me to talk about it on social media, and I've never done social media before, I'm not that comfortable with that. So it has to do with the comfort zone and whatnot. And always people wanting to go back to their comfort zone, improving the product even more and more and more. And the key question is, when do we start? I don't disagree with you. I don't agree with the fact that we should go and mass advertise with a very bad product. This can fire back. But where's the balance? How it's very tricky, I feel.
Yeah, so I have a similar opinion to Alice, right? And I am an engineer, right? So an engineer is typically would like to focus on the product. But what I've learned with time is my best try is always going to fall short to customer expectation, because I have a limited understanding of the need from my own vantage point, and sometimes the market tells me that this bright idea I had for this product was not really what was the best solution to the problem, or was not the right problem, right? So watching very closely how people use my product, who buys, who pays, how much they pay for it, right? Gives me a lot of information that is critical so I can have an actual business to work out, right? So I think that the balance needs to be in which you need to do to try a best effort to come up with something that provides enough value right? And it's not going to be 100% of the value, at least in the first try, right? It's going to be a first version. You know, it's like the beta, right, in Google. And then as you continue to learn, if you are listening to your market, you're listening to your customers, hopefully you're evolving quickly your product to meet the market need. But ultimately, you know, you can always get a first guess, but until you get customers, still a guess, right? Now you can perfect your guess a lot. And that's where I think I agree with Ali. You can spend all your resources guessing, and it's not necessarily something you want to do.
Antonio, what is the famous Steve Jobs quote? Real artists ship, or something to that effect?
That's exactly right. Ship. Yeah, the other quote that I've seen is that if you are not embarrassed of your first version, you're late. So there has to be a little bit of taking the risk of sending something that you know is not 100% complete, but that is good enough so that you can test whether you know you are going the right path, right? That's really what you want to be. You want to be on the right track, and not spend too long on the wrong one.
You've been very generous with your time. We've got time for a couple more questions before our self-appointed police person Harley is going to shut us down as she's supposed to. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, we'll go until 1:10 since we started a little bit late. So we have 2 more minutes. Does anyone have any last minute questions that they want to get in? If not, I am going to link Ali's LinkedIn so you can connect with him through there after the presentation in the recap email.
I'll ask one final question, if I may. When you study martial arts, in order to get a black belt, you have to first become an instructor, because that is part of the learning journey. What have you learned mentoring others as a couple of key takeaways?
Honestly, that's that's one of the main reasons why I do mentoring. So I learn. Honestly, I've learned a lot, and like I will answer it in 2 ways. So one is in the traditional sense, like in the sense of instructing. When I hear myself, when I hear how people react to what I say, to what I advise, I'm learning much more about. I'm seeing myself in how I used to listen to advice, how I used to implement advice, and whether I am coachable or not. I'm learning much more about this, and definitely personal-wise, like I've learned much more about this. But the reality is, some of the mentees or some of the people that I try to mentor are better than me. Like there is Ibrahim, who used to be a mentor, and Antonio knows him. Like he is incredible. He is an incredible architect. He's a very smart young guy. He has incredibly ambitious ideas, and all of this is contagious. Like when you deal with someone who is ambitious, who is trying hard, who is failing and getting up, honestly, this is inspiring to me. Not just let alone the technical side, where actually he is more tech savvy than I am, and I just get more inspired to learn more and to actually try to almost copy the mentee more. So honestly, I would advise anyone to become a mentor, even if, like, I'm learning. When I'm talking about leverages, some of the stuff, like, I am learning. I'm just sharing my learnings, and I'm sure in a year from now I will have different ideas about these specific leverages. Nevertheless, sharing them, listening to the opinion will add value to me and will add value to all of us, and this is how we function as a community.
Well, thank you so much. This was a great discussion, and I'll take a page out of the lecture and ask you to refer others if this has been a good experience for you. And I would also invite you to become members and a part of DOMI's community in some way. And finally, if you have ideas for topics, please share those with us rather. And so I want to thank all of you for your participation today.
Thank you for being so generous with your time. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Bye.